Tony and I are glad that you're with us today to study the Psalms. We're in Psalm 40, and Psalm 40 is really a good psalm for Thanksgiving week because we can use the verses to give God our thanks. So we're going to show you ways that we think we can use it, and hopefully you will too. Let me make you a note. Towards the end of the psalm, there's some verses that are actually repeated again in Psalm 70. And so we're not going to cover those verses today. We'll wait until we get to Psalm 70 and do that. One of the things that I have done over the years is to pray through the Psalms, and I really appreciate how the Psalms enable me to find words that I don't have. And so I use their words to give God praise. So, or to give him my requests or my prayers, whichever the case might be. Today it's praise and thanks. So let's look at verses 1 through 3. He said, I waited patiently for the Lord's help. Then he listened to me and heard my cry. He pulled me out of a dangerous pit, out of the deadly quicksand. He set me safely on a rock and made me secure. He taught me to sing a new song, a song of praise to our God. Many who see this will take warning and put their trust in the Lord. What I'd encourage you to do is what my plan is, and that is to take these verses and to think through them and to use them to just thank God this Thanksgiving week. So, when were times that I heard God or God heard my cry? I was sad, I was difficult, I cried out to him, he answered. I can think of a couple of those and just say, God, thank you for being there for me. What about times when God put me out of a pit? Usually the pit that I'm in is one that I put myself into. How did God pull me out? Thank him for that. How does God protect me, make me feel secure? Think about that. I thought about just how I drive, and there are at least 3 times in my life where God protected me from my own driving. Think about how God does that for you. When was the day that you had, or I had, or Tony, you had, that you were just so full of joy that all you could do is give God praise and thanks? Your just whole life was light. And then what does God do in my life on a regular basis that helps me to trust him and to feel secure? So you can go through those verses, pick out the things that really speak to you, and then use them to talk to God about it.
It is a vast understatement that there is no one like God. It is foolish and short sighted to place our trust in a feeble substitute for God. Psalms 40, 4 and 5 tell us, happy are those who trust the Lord, who do not turn to idols or join those who worship false gods. You have done many things for us, O Lord our God. There is no one like you. You have made many wonderful plans for us. I can never speak of them all. Their number is so great. Idols are substitutes for the one true God. We turn to the idols when we replace the above statements with something or someone other than God. For example, when I'm sad, I turn to, and then you can name the addiction or other activity that relieves your sadness. Or when I get myself into a pit of trouble, I turn to, you could name something or someone other than God that you seek for assistance. Or I rely on my money, my home security, my government, etc., to protect me and keep me secure. There may be other examples of how we subtly incorporate idols into our lives. Try spending a few minutes thinking about who or what gets your energy that should be reserved for God. The best part of verses 4 through 5 is how they can further our praise and thanks to God. Why is there no one who can take the place of God in your life? Think of at least one reason why this is so, then give God praise and thanks for all his goodness. One of the great hymns of the church is entitled Count Your Blessings, and this is a good time to make a list of your blessings and thank God for them.
You got it. You got it. So when the psalm was written, people would go to the temple and they would, along with the psalm, they would bring a sacrifice. But God gave the writer of this psalm some insight, and we learned that he didn't bring a physical sacrifice like an animal, but rather he brought his sacrifice that were the words that he learned from God and then began to incorporate into his life. So let's look at verses 6 through 8. You do not want sacrifice and offerings. You do not ask for animals burned whole on the altar, for sacrifices to take away sins. Instead, you've given me ears to hear you. And so I answered, here I am. Your instructions for me are in the book of the law. How I love to do your will, my God. I keep your teaching in my heart. So the praise that God wants And the praise that he said to this psalmist in his heart was, know and do my will. So I don't care what you call worship or what we call worship. God calls worship knowing and doing his will. And so it's really important for us to zero in on that. So as we thank God and we give God praise this week, let's do it by learning his law, by learning his instructions for life, and then following them. Okay?
Mm-hmm. When God does something noteworthy in our lives, we are called to tell others what he has done. We share what God has done to encourage other people to experience his love too. In the assembly of all your people, Lord, I told the good news that you save us. You know that I will never stop telling it. I have not kept the news of salvation to myself. I have always spoken of your faithfulness and help. In the assembly of all your people, I have not been silent about your loyalty and constant love. Lord, I know you will never stop being merciful to me. Your love and loyalty will always keep me safe. Psalms 49 through 11. What did the speaker in Psalms learn about God? Through the experience of his life, he learned the nature and character of God, and he shared it with other people. The world needs to know that God is loyal and will always be on our side. People around us need to know that God's love is constant and will never diminish. People in our sphere of influence need to know that God is merciful. The world needs to know that God saves us from harm. As we give specific examples from our lives, we can illuminate God's magnificent nature. Please take a moment this Thanksgiving season to tell your friends on Facebook or other ways that you communicate with others about God's great goodness through your own personal experiences. And that's called our witness.
That's our witness.
Mm-hmm.
How are people going to know what God's done unless you say, this is what God has done in my life, and this is how what he has done reveals who he is? And by the way, those are 4 statements that are historically presented in the Old Testament as highlights of God's character. So you dig into those and look at it. Thanks for being a part of this. If you have a prayer request, send me an email at bsprad49@gmail.com or private message me on Facebook. Tony and I will pray for you. We'll also ask our prayer team at Maywood to pray for you. Have a great Thanksgiving week. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.